Welcome back. Scott Brown and Krista Swanson joining us for our marketing roundtables this weekend. All right, Scott, we talked about the acreage estimates out of that Ag Economist's monthly monitor, but you also asked the economists, other than weather and acreage, what are the potential biggest market movers over the next 6 months? What do economists say?
Number one at the top of the list of almost all these commodities is, of course, weather, as we've talked about on the yield side. I think some are seeing some demand weakness, soybean prices in particular, seeing some other veg oils substitutes entering the picture. Maybe Brazilian supplies are bigger on the soybean side. Strong dollar continues to be important in terms of our ability to move product out of the United States. Take cotton, for example, lack of China trade was mentioned in that. But those are so a lot of the things that seem to be slightly more negative as we look at this month's monitor. And when you look at the survey results, that comes through with almost all these commodities, with the exception of cattle. Survey respondents saying we're slightly more pessimistic this month than we were last month.
All right, let's talk about the demand front, Krista, okay? Because we know Mexico and the U.S. will meet next week in Mexico City over Mexico's ban of genetically modified white corn in tortillas, and really talking about how that impacts us down the road, okay? So we're seeing Mexico come to the U.S. and possibly will be our top trading partner this year. So have we seen that ban on genetically modified white corn? Have we seen that impact corn demand?
Yeah, so it has impacted white corn demand specifically. And the reason that when we look at overall corn demand and we still see Mexico as being a big buyer is because white corn is such a small percentage of our total corn. So if you look specifically at white corn exports, you do see that impact. When we talk about the total corn complex, though, Mexico's had a drought that has reduced their production. They already consume quite a bit more than they produce, so they tend to be an importer. But this year they've had to import more than normal, and so that's where we're seeing those big buys coming in from Mexico, and where that's really boosted U.S. corn exports this year.
Krista, also news this week, and you're in Washington, but NCGA, along with Farm Bureau and other groups, filing a second lawsuit related to the EPA tailpipe emissions rules. So when you look at that rule, what implications could it have for corn demand here in the U.S.?
Yeah, so this lawsuit is related to, in March, the Environmental Protection Agency released its final 2027 to 2032 emission standards for light and medium duty vehicles. And then they came out with another ruling specific to heavy duty vehicles. But the problem here is that it's really just a one size fits all solution that with the goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but it's exclusively through electric vehicles and ignoring, the available solution that biofuels provide. And so, it's talking about an increase from about 1% of vehicles today that are electric vehicles to 67% for that light and medium duty by 2032. So if we think about what that means in terms of fuel use and therefore ethanol use, and then down the chain to corn use, definitely a big impact. I use the numbers that EPA put out in that rule and determined that by 2041, that would translate to 1 billion bushels less of corn demand. And that number continues to increase from there on out annually. So that's an annual number. And I've seen some other studies that make different assumptions on fleet turnover that show that 1 billion, where we hit that 1 billion threshold of loss to corn demand, actually happens even sooner than that. So, I think definitely a big concern, especially as we have technology and hybrids and improving management practices that are allowing us to continually produce more on the same number of acres. We're looking at this setup where the potential for losing a big chunk of our corn demand in an environment where we can keep producing more.
All right, from corn to cattle, Scott, I know you mentioned cattle earlier, but ProFarmer reporting that packers were actively raising cash cattle bids in the northern market in an attempt to obtain supplies as cattle numbers are tight. And we just heard of some phenomenal bids out there, but also ProFarmer saying so far feedlots are passing, suggesting that there could be another significant increase in the average cash price this week. I mean, my goodness, how high are these cash prices going to go?
it's hard to keep suggesting higher prices when we're already at record levels, but when you look at where we're at in terms of cattle inventory, cattle numbers, we're only going to get tighter. It reminds me when USDA tells us their 2025 estimate for beef production is another greater than 1 billion pound decline, that we're not done getting tighter. Now, I keep saying I'm not sure we're done with record prices. That I think all hinges on demand staying strong for U.S. beef, especially here in the United States. And at some point, do consumers decide to shift more than maybe what we're already seeing? But we have no signs that we're really building the cow herd at this point. And we know that when that portion of the cycle starts to happen, we're even going to pull more animals in. And I will say it's nice to see us no longer having to feed $7 corn. That corn farmers may not like that answer, but the idea that we're now feeding $4.75, $4.50 corn in some cases, I think provides even potentially more lift for feeder cattle prices as we go into the fall.
All right, Scott Brown, thank you so much. Krista, thank you for taking a break. I know you're busy in Washington, D.C. this week, so thanks for taking a break and chatting with us. All right, we need to take a quick break, and then we'll check in with Machinery Pete for Tractor Tales next.